Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Common Sense with Dr. Ben Carson. I'm your host, Ben Carson. And, I talk about common sense a lot because it's not common anymore. You look at our political system, you look at our educational system, you look at what's going on in sports, you look at what's going on in entertainment. It really has gotten to be sort of an oxymoron, common sense in America. But we have to bring it back, and that means each one of us has to be involved. And my guest today is the epitome of common sense. And I want you to see if you can guess who he might be. He's won all kinds of awards, an Academy Award, the British Academy Film Award, several Golden Globe Awards, the National Medal of Arts. He's been involved in numerous films that you might know of, like Coming Home. This one's going to give him away. Midnight Cowboy. And Mission Impossible, Enemy of the State, Pearl Harbor, Glory Road, the National Treasure film series. It goes on, just about everything Hollywood. And by now you know that I'm talking about Jon Voight, one of the most serious actors and most famous actors in the history of Hollywood. Jon, welcome to the program, and thank you so much for being with us today.
It's very good to see you, Ben, always.
And I want to ask you, who were some of the inspirational figures for you in the film industry?
Well, I grew up, I'm an older fella, in 1938, and my dad was a golf professional, and he loved movies. And so we paid attention. At the age of 5, when I was in kindergarten, my father started taking his 3 boys. I'm the middle, 1 year younger than my older brother Barry, and 1 year older than my younger brother, who was Wes Voight, and changed his name to Chip Taylor when he became a singer-songwriter. And
he wrote some famous songs, didn't he?
Yeah, he wrote Wild Thing. He wrote Angel of the Morning. He wrote some nice songs. He's great. He's in the Hall of Fame, the Songwriters Hall of Fame. So, but anyway, we saw these wonderful movies when we were young. My dad took us to everything, and that was a time when even the adult movies were not dangerous to kids. So we grew up on some great, in a great time of the movie industry, the golden age they call it, and I think it still stands as the ultimate in filmmaking in many ways. Of course, we've had a lot of technological changes, and we've had very talented people throughout the decades, but we still go back and refer to that golden age because of the moral stances of the people involved at that time. And
there used to be something called the Sill of good practice, which meant that there was supposed to be some moral lesson or some good that came out of the movie.
Well, I think I give myself credit for the one who discovered this. I'll tell you something. When I looked at the films back then, and I knew that the fellas who were the moguls at that time, there were these fellas who came from Europe and established this business. They became the heads of these. They set up these studios, and they were all Jewish guys. And as far as I can see, is going through my life, reading a little bit of the Bible and stuff, I came to an understanding that at the end of every session or chapter in the Bible, they had to have a positive ending. If you look at the Jewish Bible, If you look at Isaiah, for instance, the prophet Isaiah, and you come to the end, well, they could have ended it on a very sour note, but they came back and repeated the positive aspect, some little hope for the future. And I think that was that was really the base of what we know as the Hollywood ending, the happy ending. Do you know what I'm saying? To finish it out, gives people hope at the end and give them a happy ending. And I'm very grateful for that. And we've kind of lost that in a way. Do you
No,
see?
we have definitely lost that. But what were some of the most significant and memorable roles for you?
My roles, the roles I played, or
Yeah,
oh well, Doctor, I've
there were
been.
so many.
Yes, there are very many. As you get older, you look back in a different way at your career, um, I was very fortunate. I can look back and say, boy, I was really fortunate. I worked with wonderful people, and I was, although I turned down things that were very good, and I pursued things and lost pieces that I thought I could play.
You turned down the captain's role in Jaws, didn't you?
No, I did not. No, that's a myth. I was never offered that. Um, I think that was a great movie, and Robert Shaw was terrific in that part. And I was not as old as Robert at that time. I was a younger fellow, but Steven Spielberg offered me a role in one of his pictures that was not one of his great victories, but I turned it down because it was a repeat of the character in Midnight Cowboy, and I didn't want to repeat that. And then it got out that Jon Voight had turned down a movie with Steven Spielberg, and then it kind of passed from one film to another. So got a reputation from turning. But I didn't turn down anything that was important with Steven. But I did turn down a Love Story, kind of famously. It came as the benefit of some of the successes I had, and they asked me to do Love Story, and I said to them, no, I can't do this part. I said, I'd just mess it up for you. And they said, why? And I said, because I'd make it too complicated. and that's the truth. I just playing this very nice fellow who was a sincere, good guy. It required a movie star, and I was really a character actor, and in some way, and the fellow who played it awfully well. So
I think some people might argue with you about that.
well, I don't know. It was, but it was. You do different things. I pursued One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and didn't get it, and Jack got it, and he was brilliant. Of course, he couldn't have been better. And I pursued Schindler's List too, and Liam did his part. He was brilliant too. So I didn't. I wouldn't have been better than those fellas. So but I had good taste in pursuing those.
Well,
those pieces.
you've recently gotten involved in the new Reagan movie.
Yeah.
Playing one of the Russian characters. And you actually did a pretty good job with that accent, I must admit. But I wanted to ask you, did you know Ronald Reagan?
No, I did not. No, I did not. And I when I was a young fellow, I was in the 60s, I was caught up on the left. And it was just a beginning of the left, and there was a lot of, the left, the 60s were really a crazy time. And we were really invaded by a lot of very bad philosophy in that time. And yet some of the characters in it were very charismatic and interesting. Like Abby Hoffman and people like that, the Chicago 7, and Jane Fonda was out here in California, and very interesting people and sincere people. But as we get a little distance on it, we realize we were being manipulated. It was an interesting thing that that all of those marches against the war were organized by the Communist Party of the United States, which is, and we all knew it. It was almost like the Communist Party is just an organization, but we didn't assign any evil to any of that,
Absolutely. Well, of course, if you read the congressional record from January the 10th, 1963,
you bet.
Congressman Herlong read into the record the 45 goals of communism in America. This was over 60 years ago. And yet, you just tick down that list, infiltrate the public schools and gain control of them and teacher unions so you can indoctrinate the kids, gain control of Hollywood and the news media so that you can manipulate the minds of the American people. And you've probably, to some degree, seen that change because there wasn't. Indeed.
I want to recommend this book. I had a copy of it, and then I asked you, through Andrew, your friend, to get me another copy. I needed it because I was going to be talking about this very subject, and I recommend this book. It's a tremendous contribution to this time right now.
Well, thank you. I mean,
The Perilous Fight, folks. Overcoming Our Culture War on the American Family, and it's written by Dr. Ben Carson and his wife Candy, and it's a terrific book. I wanted to just make clear that this book has all the information that we really deeply need right now to point us in the direction toward getting out of this morass we're in.
Some people think that it's inevitable, that our decline is inevitable. But, I think America is different than all those other countries who have succumbed to the Marxist ideology. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that we believe that our rights come from our Creator,
right,
from God. And there's a moral code that has guided us for a very long time. We're in the process of trying to throw God out right now. And as a result of that, you see a rather rapid decline. But I don't think it's too late by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, I think the fight is on, and I think this time right now is very key to to that what you speak of, that future that we have is on the line, and and I know there are many heroes out there who are you among them, prominent among them, that are giving us guidance and giving us hope and encouraging all the worthy warriors who are, when I say warriors, I mean people who are really taking on the battle for in all the different areas, like people like the mothers who go and battle for the safety of their children in the schools against the teachers' unions and the people who are manipulating the education of the children these days. And there are all sorts of good people out there. So I share that hope with you that we can get by this. But this is a key time. I think this election is.
I guess the biggest problem is that some people are not courageous. They believe the right things and they have the right aspirations, but they're not willing to take a stand. And I don't believe that you can remain the land of the free if you're not also the home of the brave. You got to be willing to stand up for what you believe in.
In terms of that, I'm always deeply moved by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. and the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. How magnificent is that? You know, in God we trust. There's so many different reminders of the path we have been on, and the blessing that we've been given through the founding principles and founding people, the amazing founding people that fought this revolution and put themselves on the line by signing the Declaration of Independence. I mean, we have a history of the brave, for sure. And then we have this beautiful song, this Star Spangled Banner, that has also all these wonderful reminders of who we are, very eloquently put by Francis Scott Key. And that whole thing about that song coming forth at that time with the history of Fort McHenry, at a time when James Madison was the president, and it was the War of 1812, 30 years after the Revolution.
Very inspirational if you know the story, you know?
Oh, it's amazing.
But most people probably don't really know the story. They don't know what's behind it. They sing those words and they don't really understand what we're talking about.
Right. And that's why I mentioned it. So, I say, go look at that. It's very inspiring. Our whole history is very inspiring. And and that very history has been attacked by the KGB and their plans. In the schools, they don't teach this stuff any longer. And so we have to bring all that back, the idea that they don't allow God in schools. This came from the KGB. That's how that was one of their first pieces of the menu, was to get God out of the schools so they could move in.
They want to be God. They want you to depend completely on them.
And it's also interesting that we're talking about this. The people who are running for president on the other side of the aisle, Democrat people, are connected to socialism. Both the person who's running for president and the person who's running for vice president. They're deeply connected to socialism, as was Obama. He's connected to, communist, this fellow who was mentored him when he was a child, and his grandparents were connected to the Communist Party of the United States. I mean, you start putting the pieces together. It's it's all connected.
Very insidious, the way that they have done things, and the way that they have dumbed down the population. This always occurs before socialism takes over. You have to dumb the people down to the point where you can just tell them what's going on, and they don't believe their own eyes and ears. They just accept what you tell them. We're getting to that place.
There's so many things that come into my mind as you speak. There was this fellow, Yuri Bezmenov, who was a defector from the Soviet Union, who was a spy. And I went to school on him to play the role in Reagan. And in the middle of the 80s, he came out and told us everything that was going on and the plans and for the Soviet Union, for how to take down America, and replicated all the things you talked about in your book of the menu that the KGB had, and he backed up it all. And I wrote down something that he had said. Let me read this to you, if I could. He said, they called it, different names, but it was a subversion, and they said what it basically means. This is Yuri Bezmenov saying, what it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interest of defending themselves, their families, the community, and their country. They're not able to think straight. And that's what they've accomplished. So when people say to me, what's wrong with this group or that group, or whatever it is, whether it's people in Hollywood, people in the press, whatever, I said, well, they've been programmed. And they've been they have no way of defending themselves because propaganda works. It's a scientific thing that they developed in the Soviet Union with all the work that they did with Korea, with Vietnam, with Eastern Europe. They refined this. And all toward taking down the big guy, which is the United States of America.
Well, it's particularly think that the media is involved the way that they are because
this was one of the things, take over the media.
Yeah, they don't realize that the first thing that communists and Marxists do is they control the media. They're digging their own grave, and they don't even seem to realize it.
Right.
And I guess that's why Vladimir Lenin called them useful idiots. You need people like that in order to fundamentally change a society, and that's what's happening with us. I'm not giving up yet by any stretch of the imagination. I think we can find our way through it if we remember the things that made us into a great nation.
Yeah, I agree with that, Doctor. I also it was interesting. I came across this in the pursuit of history, of our history. I came across this moment when Ben Franklin stood in front of the Constitutional Convention. They were having a lot of difficulty because everybody had their own personal desires and local needs and stuff. And they worked about 4 or 5 weeks, I think, and they came to no conclusions about how to create a government. And he stepped up and he said, and he was the older fellow.
He was 81 years old at that time.
Yeah, I was 4 years. I'm 4 years his senior. But he said, "Gentlemen, isn't it strange that we've come to this point where everyone is, bargaining for their local positions and this and that, and the egos are getting involved, and we're having this chaos, and with no end in sight at this moment. And we've done so much work. We've looked at all of the possibilities of governments throughout history, and not only in this, and we've sought what has happened in the rest of the world, looking for the proper, and we haven't sought the advice of the Father of Lights, who helped us through the revolutionary war that we were in when we needed so desperately some help. We prayed daily for guidance at that time, and he responded. Are we now to throw him out? We need to go back to make our connection and to plead for help from our Creator, and to do that regularly so we can see straight. And this is very bad interpretation of the eloquence of Ben Franklin, but that's essentially what he was saying. And they
knelt down and they prayed.
And he said, let's start every session with prayer, with a plea for understanding and being on the right track, and from the Holy Father.
And that was interesting. They then went on to put together our Constitution. But
exactly.
remember when Franklin came out of that building, he was asked by a woman, "Sir, what do we have here, a monarchy or a republic?" And he famously said, "A republic, if we can keep it."
That's it, yeah.
And how close are we to losing it when a party uses the Department of Justice to go after their political rival?
The hope that I have is the heroes that are taking it on. I mean, there are people who are in every part of this battle. Like, for instance, the government covering up so much information, and there are people who are daily going to courts to try to get this information that they know they have as on record, and finding out the truth of so many things, exposing that. And in the meantime, the people on the other side are trying to cover up everything and attack the people who are bringing forth the truth. So, so we're, but there are people taking on the battle, and we still have the ballot at this moment. Although the ballot has been attacked as well with all of the tricks that they're playing to put people on the rolls that don't belong there. So we're fighting that battle too, and there are guys out in front of that battle. So we'll see how we go. But what I want to say to the people listening is that God is still in His seat, and that's the hope we all have. And the advice of Ben Franklin holds to us too. Pray in the morning, every morning.
We have a question from one of our viewers from Hope, Texas. Have you experienced
Isn't that lovely? Hope, Texas, wonderful. It means everything.
There's Hope, Arkansas also. She wants to know, have you experienced hardship due to standing up for your beliefs in the movie industry? What advice would you give to younger generations interested in making America a better place?
Well, that's a nice question. Obviously, the person who's asking it is a person of sound mind and common sense. Have I experienced that? Yes, I've had, people, they don't consider me for certain jobs because of it. And they talk negatively about me among themselves, certain groups of people here in Hollywood. So, and those people have gained access to the power tools in this society, as evidenced by some of the bad, points of view in films that have come out. The negativity that we're talking about that is part of the major plan to take down this country. They're a participant in it, but. Also, I think that there are many, many people in the Hollywood area that are rooting for me and grateful for me speaking out, because it's hard to do that here without losing work. And that's a big thing. I don't recommend people run around proselytizing. It's a danger out here. You want to protect yourself, and you want to, be smart. One of the things that I do is I don't really talk politics when I'm working. If someone asks me about something, I'll respond to it, but I don't, I focus on the work. And I look forward to the day when we can be open about the things we feel, and have a free society, the land of the free. It's who we are, and we've been attacked, and we've got to get back to that. But anyway, I have I have a great regard for the artists in this community. There are great artists here today, as there always have been. But there's been this poison inserted into our society as a whole, and that we're talking about, and they're victims of it. But there's a wonderful line in the great movie Casablanca, which is one of the great movies, and Humphrey Bogart is speaking with the great British actor, and and he says, what brings you to Casablanca, Ricky? And Humphrey Bogart says, I come for the water. I came for the water. And he says, but there's no water here. It's the middle of a desert. And he says, I was misinformed. That's what he says. And I say to the people here, I said, they were misinformed. And it goes to Jesus on the cross saying, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. They've been taken away, and we've got to rescue all of us, do the best we can to rescue ourselves.
So you would say your advice for them would be not to provoke people,
right,
but to be willing to stand up for what you believe when asked.
Yes, live it. Yes, if you're asked, you say what you feel, and you live what you feel.
Now, what I always tell people is you've been told since the time you were a little child that there are two things you should never speak about in public: politics and religion.
Right.
And I say right now, those are the two things you need to talk about. You need to express, because those are the areas that are being attacked to destroy our society. And evil flourishes in darkness. It does not like the light shined on it. It doesn't want to be talked about. We need to talk about it. We need to talk about who we are and the fact that we are not enemies. You saw that in the book, W-A-N-E. We are not enemies. We are friends and colleagues and neighbors who've been manipulated into thinking that we're enemies just because we don't agree about everything. But if two people agree about everything, one of them isn't necessary. We just need to learn how to talk to each other and to find out those things that we have in common and work on them and to improve our society and to learn from our mistakes as well as from our triumphs.
Well, you couldn't get better advice than that, folks. I mean, that's a wonderful way of describing our needs at this time. When you think of schools, education, and you think that there's a party line, and it is like a party line. That's exactly what it is. It was invented by the Soviets. That people can't say what they really feel. Well, this is crazy. How are you going to get to know anybody if you don't know what they feel? Allow them to express themselves?
And that's where the courage comes in. And that's why Ronald Reagan said, if you don't protect your freedoms, you're never more than one generation away from losing them.
Right.
And I think he was looking forward into the future and seeing what we're facing now. But our founders were smart enough to put the real solution in the hands of the people, which is the vote. But you have to use the vote appropriately. You can't just look for the name that looks familiar. You got to know who these people are.
You got to do your job as a voter. You have to do your job. You have to look around, sift it, and talk to other people, and find out information, and look things up, and the things I've talked about, in terms of the influence of this socialist aspect. Socialism is dangerous. It goes right into communism. It becomes tyranny. It becomes misery.
You don't have to look very far to see that, do you? All you have to do is look to our south with Venezuela, which used to be a beautiful country.
Exactly. And it turned over like that. And it's a very good example of what's happening right now in the United States. I was in a restaurant the other day, and this man came over to me, an older man. He was about 20 years younger than I, but he was an older man. And he said, and he came over, and you could tell he was a heavy heart. And he came over, and he said, John, can I just speak with you? He said, I'm from Russia. I came here in 85, and I see what's happening here is exactly what happened in 1917 in our country. I feel sick from this. I see it in front of me. Right. He's accurate. He's seeing this takeover. The battle is on, and to think that they've taken over the press to such an extent that every everything is translated into something that is against America, that is helping them take down our country, and we're not able to stop it. Amazing, you know.
You're right on target. We have a section in on American Cornerstone called My American Story, where we interview people who came from socialist areas, and they tell us about the warnings and the things that we should be looking for and why we should be concerned and why we have to be active, because we are heading straight there. And I just want to thank you for being a voice of reason, for being a voice of courage, for being a patriot, because that encourages other people. And I think there are more of us who think the right way and who love our country than there are who want to fundamentally change us. But we just have to be willing to work together, to think logically, throw away this stuff like, I'm not voting for that person because I don't like him. He's got good policy, but I don't like him. Do you like your children? Do you like your grandchildren? Do you like the people who are going to be affected by all of these policies? You got to think big. You got to look at the big picture, not look at little idiosyncrasies.
Right. I happen to know the fellow we're talking about. You know, we both know him, and we're both impressed with him. He's got great instincts. He's a person who loves this country. He loves what we're talking about. All the things we're talking about, he's in. He understands. And if you look at the things that he's accomplished, just as accomplishments, it's quite amazing what he's done. And he's been constantly under attack during the creation of all of these triumphs that he's part of.
But because he won't get in the bed with the purveyors of the deep state, with people who are trying to control things. There's on both sides of the aisle, there are such people. He will not get in bed with them, and they know that he is an existential threat to them. Therefore, they have to characterize him as the one who is the danger. But when people start thinking for themselves, I think they will see who the real danger is and what they need to do to protect and preserve the most incredible nation that has ever existed for those who are coming after us.
Wonderfully said. I thank God for you and all those people out there that are listening to you. We have the hope to change this thing, and it's coming right up in front of us now.
Absolutely, we're gonna win. I do know that. Can you tell people where they can watch the Reagan movie?
Well, it's in theaters today. It's in theaters all over the country today. Just look in the look at the listings for your area, find out where the picture is playing, and go see it. You'll get a lift, and it's a delightful movie. It's delightful. Well, it's an instructive movie, maybe, but it's a great story that will give us the hope that we can accomplish all the things we need to do at this time. He fought the battle quite beautifully, with great grace, with great humor, and there's a love story in it. His wife, Nancy, was his partner in many ways, and that love story is very moving in the picture. And talking about that, I just want to say thanks to Candy and your wonderful relationship with your wife that produced this beautiful book.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for everything you've done, and thank you all for joining us today. And remember to rate us, review us. We like those 5-star reviews. Tell your friends about us, because we've got to spread common sense around. And remember the cornerstone principles: faith, liberty, community, and life.